Thank you, everybody, and welcome to General Services Committee tonight, 17th of December. Due to the government guidance on social distancing and COVID-19, the meeting will not be held open to members of the public to attend. Arrangements will be made for the present public to watch the meeting via the Council's online webcast. There are mainly members who are joining us by MS Teams, and they are myself, the Vice Chair, Councillor Kent, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Massey and Councillor Canardi, with Councillor Coxall and Councillor Hebb in the chamber. So moving on to item 1, apologies for absence. I haven't received any apologies for absence. Moving on to item 2, which is the minutes from previous meetings. Due to a number of reasons, I was absent for those meetings, so could they be moved and agreed?
Agreed.
John?
Yeah, happy to move them as the chair of those meetings.
Thank you for that, Councillor Kent. So with that, has it been moved? Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Excellent. What I shall do, unless there's dissent, we will move as things are accepted until we get on to obviously the substantive item. So moving on to item 3, which are items of urgent business. I've not received any notice of any urgent items of business this evening. Item 4, declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest in relation to the matter at hand this evening? I'm not seeing any raised hands, so I'm going to take that as a no. Thank you very much. So then moving on to item 5, which is the paper mark Thurrock Regeneration Limited. I'm going to pass over to Councillor Coxall to introduce and move the item.
And I'm going to pass it to Andy because it's a technical item. So Andy can then, and I will follow up afterwards. Andy Millard.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, and good evening. Yeah, just in terms of a brief introduction to what is a relatively short report, which simply relates to the need to appoint a director to TRL and the mechanisms to ensure that this can be achieved. TRL is wholly owned by Thurrock Borough Council, whereas TRHL is wholly owned by TRL. Within the Council, the General Services Committee, this committee is the shareholder of TRL. TRL had a board of directors which comprised 3 council officers and 1 external party. All of the directors have resigned from their posts, and there is a need therefore to have a director in place for operational reasons of the company. In the absence of any directors, the decision reverts to the shareholder, that is this committee, to appoint a new director. The report nominates myself as Director of Place to vote on behalf of the shareholder and solely under this committee's instruction as its nominated proxy to the appropriate TRL shareholder meeting, which is on the 21st of December, to appoint a new director. All this leads to the 3 recommendations, Chair, that are set out on pages 9 and 10 of this report. Thank you.
I'd like to add.
Apologies. Thank you, Andy. Councillor Coxall?
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. Obviously, this is, I'll reiterate, really, this is a technical item just to deliver a delegated authority to only to the shareholder meeting on the 21st of December. And I would suggest that really we do need to, in these, maybe another paper coming back, because this is a long period for TRL, and after the paper that's gone through PTR about the housing report, and then obviously Cabinet was only a week before last, I think, was where we achieved the mixed approach for housing, and how the mixed approach would mean that TRL is needed to move all forward. But this is a stayed position for a short term with Roger Harris leaving us. We see ACT as it's actually managing housing at the moment, as it's and it only has one only one land holding at Belmont Road. we just need to keep it ticking over until such time as the housing white paper and the housing report, not that paper, that we went through cabinet, get some more meat on it as it goes forward, and we can then see what TRL is needed for in the long term, medium and long term. So I would suggest maybe, Chair, if we could put something in that another paper comes back before the March, so we can review that as shareholders to see, making sure that this is in line and the shareholders are being met, and obviously Roger, we can review the directors at a later date before March, say in 3 months, that could come back to the paper. And so some way of putting another item there, another paper coming back in 3 months, I think that will be helpful. So this is a very, very short-term appointment.
Thank you, Councillor Coxhill. I think that's probably a really good idea to have another paper. I say 3 months seems to be reasonable, puts us in line with starts of municipal years and obviously start of tax years, etc. So we just need to come up with the wording on that. I'm going to throw this now, obviously the technical paper, open to members of the committee. If you can raise your hands electronically so I can see if there's anybody outside of the chamber who wishes to speak. Councillor Kent? Councillor Kent?
Yeah, just turning my mic on and putting my hand down so as not to add to confusion. I've got some questions. So, shall I go through them one at a time?
That would be helpful.
So the first is, in the executive summary, we're told that TRL set up a subsidiary company under the name of Thurrock Regeneration Homes Limited back in 2017. Can somebody explain the purpose of the subsidiary, please?
Any company always sets up a subsidiary company. I've been in a few where we've always set up a separate company to actually do a delivery arm to make sure they're protecting the shareholders, but I'm happy to pass over to maybe the lawyer with the reason why, or the shareholders at the time. Andy, do you know?
Sorry, Chair, try to take the mic off. I don't directly. I wonder whether Ian or Anna could answer that, because it relates back to a moment in time when the decision was made.
Chair, perhaps I can shed a little light on it. I don't know that I know the complete history way back in 2017, but essentially Thurrock Homes is set up to hold the properties that the council has retained in its ownership and rents out. So it's a management company essentially for the properties that we currently retain at St Chad's, and any future properties that would be developed and built and then transferred into the management company for the purposes of managing the lettings and the occupation and the maintenance of them. That's the purpose of TRHL, and obviously Thurrock Regeneration Limited is the development arm which owns TRHL in its entirety, if that answers the question.
Okay. Thank you for that. As we move through the report, we're told at 2.2 that 3 directors have recently resigned from the board. All 3 directors actually resigned on the 31st of August. We're told it's principally due to a conflict of interest with their council roles. Can somebody explain more fully what that conflict of interest is, please? The word principally suggests that there's more than one reason. So can somebody just fill in if there is more than one reason? We're then being told that one being a change of role within the council, which led to a specific and direct conflict. Which director is it that, or former director is it, that had the specific and direct conflict? And what was the nature of that specific and direct conflict?
Look, I think there was the administration after Belmont Road over that there wanted, and during COVID, wanted to relook at what's happening. I think as we wanted a wider conversation as we go into this, coming out of it, how we deliver our housing and how we move at a faster pace. Then the directors, and I'll pass over to that we can give the technical answer why there's a direct conflict of that. I think the administration wanted to deliver and wanted some time to make sure we were doing TRL in the right processes and relook at the process, like I mentioned at full council. I think that the conflicts are awkward there because of the council officers and owners and the conflicts and actually trying to build this and the administration. I think that's why there's only one delivery of one chair who's leaving the employment of the council to reduce that, and then there's a review at the end of the 3 months. I think that makes it, there is a conflict, because obviously officers were always conflicted in the two awkward of delivering it and then passing and then the land, and then two hats was very awkward. There's not a clear gap that we found over the last 18 months, 2 years as an administration. But I can answer the conflict that they felt the officers are. I pass one to the officers to answer that specific answer. But as an administration, and I'm sure you can see, Councillor Kent, that there would be, if we're passing land that we own into there and then the role of it disappears in from there, there is an issue of that we saw in Belmont Road.
Thank you, Councillor Coxhill. Andy or Anna?
Chair, if I can come in first, it's difficult for me to speak on behalf of different directors and their reasons for their perceived conflict. I think that Councillor Coxhill summarises the two hats, wearing of two hats issue well, and I think that's the primary reason for their resignation.
Thank you, Andy. Sorry, Councillor Byrne, just I haven't forgotten you, but I'm not entirely sure how many more questions Councillor Kent has got. Councillor Kent?
Well, I don't think I've got an answer to that one. You know, we are told in the report, and I'll read it, principally due to a conflict of interest with their own council roles, one being a change of role within the council which led to a specific and direct conflict. Can somebody tell me which officer resigned because they had a specific and direct conflict?
It was me, Councillor Kent.
And could you tell me what that specific and direct conflict is?
That's because when I first joined the council, I was the Assistant Director for Lower Thames Crossing. Then my remit expanded, and as of the beginning of September, my job changed to be the Assistant Director for Lower Thames Crossing and Place Delivery. And the Housing Delivery team sits directly underneath me, which is the team that's responsible for bringing forward developments and advising TRL. So that's the direct conflict that I have.
Okay. Can somebody tell me why it is that Carol Hindlist was appointed as a director in April 2019, and apparently at that time there was no conflict, but these conflicts became clear by August the following year?
I think it's evident that we needed, if an arm's length organisation, I think it needs arm's length directors, and you can't. I think you can see that in the whole of the last 7 years of whatever name it was. I think this is as we are learning experience coming out of what happened in Belmont Road, I think this is a good way of seeing that. And I think that's a satisfactory answer, that we're changing that and making sure there is no conflict of interest. I think you've just seen Anna give quite a clear answer. And then, obviously, if Anna did that, I think that's a fair way if we want to see a new sea change in TRL. And I think this paper, as I said, coming back in 3 months, we can actually see that we've decided in the Housing White Paper, in the multi-use, we do need to keep a TRL going. We do need to then we need a new director to hold it for the 3 months until we can put some VAT on it of what the housing report only came into Cabinet last week. So I think the learning experience as this going forward, we do need two different hats, making sure there's not multiple hats and you sell the land at one end into and pass it over to TRL and then TRL build on it. I think that the officers now do need to make sure there's a clear and present difference, and that I think is what we've learnt over the last 18 months of 2 years of operation of it.
Thank you for that, Councillor Coxhill. I think that's about as clear as we're going to get. Is that your last question there, Councillor Kent?
No, it isn't. I'll ask one more for now. So the three directors resigned on the 31st of August. Can I ask why shareholders, i.e. General Services Committee, wasn't told?
I believe I believe that was just we weren't sitting and wasn't able to sit in. I think we reported it at a full council. I answered a question on it. I thought that would be sufficient just to not call a. We could have put it as urgent business, I suppose, at the last at one of the General Services Committee meetings. Otherwise, but it was widely known. I didn't get any emails. I replied on a press comment on it, and I answered the question in full council. I thought that would be sufficient, but we maybe a learning experience. We will report everything, and I think what another learning experience I believe, and is why I've mentioned tonight that 3 monthly and quarterly reports back as shareholders to this committee, I think is a good suggestion, and I think a good suggestion of what we're coming out of this paper. And I think that could be worth that, so we would know, and we as shareholders realise that we take more an active interest in this company, and I think that would be very helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Coxhill. I'm going to move to Councillor Byrne.
Okay, got me? Hello?
We can hear you, Councillor Byrne.
If Carol Hinvis resigned as conflict of interest, as she's the assistant director, why would not the guy putting in Roger Harris, who is the actual director of housing, not have a conflict of interest? If she's got it, surely her boss would have a conflict of interest. So why are we putting a one-man band in Richard Harris if he hasn't got a conflict? And the other question is, what happens if he gets knocked down by number 9 bus tomorrow? And we've got no directors. So those are my 2 questions, please.
As I see, I can answer that quite. Roger Harris is now leaving the administration. I can see that he can then take this position up as an experienced delivery of HRA and housing. I think it's an apt thing as what TRL is doing at the moment is just controlling our housing stock. You've just heard it has tenants. I think it's an apt to have a director that's got experience of looking after housing. I think that's, and as he leaves this administration, he has experience of knowing this, and it's a very easy appointment. Now we do want to keep TRL as an entity to deliver it, a delivery arm, and looking forward in the next 3 months to how we can deliver our over 1,000 houses. I'm hoping you all were keenly watching Cabinet 2 weeks ago when I gave the report and it went through PTR, that TRL is an important part of this mixed-use arm. As we move forward in over 2021, I think we will need more directors and more experienced directors, and we need to go out to market to look for other directors and more. And that is a conversation I hope that this committee can look into. Maybe, hopefully, can start interviewing and looking at directors and make it all an active part. And hopefully tonight, coming out of it, instead of it sitting there for 6 years now, that we can actually, all the people on this committee could really get involved and make sure and shape the directors board there to make sure it's an apt and working and delivering. And we can take what's happened in the past throughout the last administration in Tilbury and our experiences at Belmont Road as a learning experience going forward, and bring this to a good vehicle to deliver the aims of the local community. That answers the Roger Harris question. What was your other question?
Well, when did Roger Harris leave?
Roger Harris leaves formally in February, but we haven't as they're shadowing the new directors coming in now in the next new year.
So we got 3 months with a director with a conflict of interest, then, yeah.
No, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Byrne, it's very clear at 2.3. It is not considered that Roger Harris will have the same conflict of interest as the previous board. This is because the role is interim in nature and is required for specific operation decisions needed for the company, such as the filing of accounts. So I think it's really quite clear in the report.
And Roger Harris Roger Harris never had in the police department actually assets to actually transfer over and sell to that bit. That is the conflict that was awkward. You heard from Anna, was when she had to become delivery in charge of place and assets as moving built properties into their delivery. That made the conflict of interest. Managing a housing stock and a place holding for a small period isn't a conflict of interest.
Okay, and the second question was, what happens if he gets knocked over by a number 9 bus tomorrow? We've got no directors. So
Again, as any other company's house happens, directors sadly pass away quite regularly at company's house. What that means, it comes straight. There's a process, and that's why we're here tonight. We would have to come through another process of this. We'll have another 2 or 3 months where I can't remember the statutory period, that we can have no directors and the shareholders control the company then we appoint and someone else. So that just happens. That's standard company policy since company house has existed.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you for that, Councillor Cockshaw, and indeed Councillor Byrne. I've got one hand up still, but I'm just having a bit of a technical issue.
Councillor Ukanadi.
Yeah, thank you very much. I had problem pressing the hand or my question is on the 3.3, and that's under the issues and the analysis of the options, and where it says that it is planned to change into a single director, and I just want to get some clarification. Why is it that it's going to change to single director, even though it's going to go through article of association as said? And also, Councillor Cockshaw said about arm's length, which is really important in terms of looking at the independency of the director. And so I would just like to find out more information about that 3.3, how that is necessary to change from 2 directors to 1 director, and then also the independence of the director.
The first one, quite an easy question. Bringing tonight 2 directors when it's just a placeholding technical position, like, to make sure that this committee, as shareholders for the council, we can actually more an active role in this, that's through the pause and reflect on what we've done over the last few during COVID about what we should do, how this should be, and how this should deliver. And with the housing report coming forward and gone through cabinet now, and some meat coming on the bone of that, and what we want as a council to deliver, and how we want to deliver our council houses, and whether TRL is the best place individually as each site comes forward and comes to PTR and into cabinet for release, is an important part of that. And then we'll definitely need, I'm hoping, I would like to commit later in 2021, we increase it to good quality people as directors. We need to increase the directors on their site. But at the moment, there's 2 spaces, and I don't think in the next 3-4 months we need any more than that, than a placeholding person to look after the housing stock that's got it, until there's enough, this council get some ambitions through the report paper, through overview scrutiny, through cabinet, to make sure we get a fast council house building programme and deliver that. And that's when we need more experienced people, and I think this committee then could be looking at who we need to actually deliver on there. This is a placeholding technical position. Arm's length is exactly what we want. What we have seen in the last 6 years, there wasn't enough arm's length position from it, and that's the learning experience of that. And I would like this committee to make sure we do have arm's length for that as going forward. And I think Roger is a place-holding position who's leaving the committee, who knows experience. I'm repeating myself from the last question, but I think there is enough arm's length there for that for the short term. And then we will move to bring back more directors, I hope, in 2021, as we see for what we want to do with TRL as a council.
Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw. I'll be honest with you, I haven't sat on the Shareholders Committee for some time. It has been a drive that's been happening over a number of years to have more outside directorship, rather than it being council officers who, as we all know, are exceptionally busy doing a day job, plus on top of this is an extra. Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to touch on something. A lot of the questions I had have been asked by other members already, but even if you're a company director for 1 day or for 100 days, you still have certain duties under the Companies Act of 2006. So these are around the constitution of the company, promoting success of the company, having independent judgment, exercising reasonable care, skill and due and diligence, avoid conflicts of interest, third-party benefits and interest in a transaction. Now, a lot of these also carry on to after you resign as a director of a limited company. They're not. It does state that on Companies House. They don't literally end the day you're not a director. So my question is, I suppose, if we are to make Roger Harris the director of TRL on an officer that's outgoing from the council, what other options did we have other than to take this, bring this paper to General Services?
Your last comment, I don't know what other options we had. It's an interesting, like, I don't know, we need a director, and I would, on the first, really attached to the first one, I think, Roger, what you've mentioned there and the onuses of the company directorship, I think that's, I was quite pleased when Roger's name come forward, and I thought it was a very good choice, and I didn't think we'd have this long discussing, and Roger, that I think we've seen that he's been for independent thought, and we've all had conversations with Roger Harris previously, and I think he's a great choice. I thought, as he leaves here, that there's still some connections to the borough. He knows the councillors, he knows everyone here personally on this committee tonight, and I think he's a good choice as an interim to look after it. And for him to accept that, I thought I was quite pleased that he was willing to do that for us as he leaves for his early retirement. So I thought that was quite a good choice, and I didn't look as anyone else. As soon as Rogers was name put forward, I thought it was a great choice for us. Yes, he's taking onerous decisions, and I think we should be pleased that he's thanking him for that. I thought that was coming out tonight. I was quite surprised this position we're in, but now. As your last question, I don't know. I can't answer that one. Anyone else can from the officers?
Councillor Vesey, would you mind just repeating that? So I think it might be something that Ian can pick up, but could you just repeat that last question, please?
Yep, it was just what other options did we have available?
Sorry, it was that element of it. There were no other nominations that had come forward. As Councillor Coxhill said, given Roger's experience, knowledge of the council and skill set, and given, as Councillor Gledhill has said, the relatively narrow and short-term nature of the appointment, the option that's come forward in terms of Roger Harris does seem to be very sound and applicable under the circumstances.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Fraser, still got your hand up?
Yeah, just to say, it's nothing against Roger. I think he's been fantastic service for Thurrock Council for a number of years. So this is in no way my questions related to Roger's ability to carry out this role. It's just around some of the details, and the other question I have, I suppose, is I do welcome Councillor Coxhill mentioning bringing reports back quarterly and not leaving this open-ended. But I think there's other aspects around the articles of association could be tightened up as well. The wording of that perhaps to be more fixed in rather than open-ended.
I quite agree. I think we've got to make this TRL, if we're going to keep it, and it's in the housing report, it went through PTR, if we're going to keep this as an arm's length body, I do think we need a bit more of the shareholders keeping an interest in that. And I've said numerous times, this committee instead of cabinet is the right place for this. It's joint working, and I think this is an ideal opportunity that we can actually make this as a standing item. I don't know, we can talk to the macro services and see how we can do that, and I can certainly fit that in. That agrees with my view that I've expounded for the last 12 months on this committee. I think this is the committee that they're trying to bring out, like Lower Thames Crossing, to here instead of going for executive cabinet decisions. I think I'm all for that. I think I mentioned that at Cabinet when we looked at how do we improve just OVN scrutiny. It's just not a body to throw lobs and hand grenades at the Cabinet. I think that would be more working, and like that, I would very appreciate that, and I think that'd be great. I think what we get is better scrutiny. You shouldn't be scared of disinfectant. Is the best. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. I think it's a great comment, and I'm trying to do that in this cabinet portfolio to make sure that works. that's what, and I agree heartily with you. I think quarterly would be great. I think it's a great way, and we can start by looking at both them items you've just mentioned.
Thank you, Councillor Cockshaw. Thank you, Councillor Massey. I mean, we did tend to meet as shareholders. It seems to be very, very frequently in the past. Although I'll be quite honest, it never actually seemed to achieve much other than a good 35-minute of chat. Councillor Hebb.
Thanks, Chair. Just reflecting on some points that Councillor Cockshaw made, this discussion seems to be structured in two ways. One, what we have to do now, and two, what we want to do next. And I think just reflecting on some of the points that Councillor Massey has made in terms of the fixed lengths and the commitment that Councillor Cockshaw has given, that gives this forum the opportunity to close the loop semi-regularly and also feed in accordingly in terms of improvements and ideas and challenge. I think we have an ability as a committee to have brought the TRL conversation to the table as frequent as we want to. And I think having that fixed length period of review is welcome. So I fully support that objective. But equally, I think the fixed length from the recommendation that Councillor Cockshaw said earlier is critical. I think that gives a degree of pace that's required underneath to build the fat, as Councillor Cockshaw articulates. We do have a new housing delivery model that's gone through overview and scrutiny and now through Cabinet. We know why that's gone through, because we want to make it ensure and continue and improve what we've done before. We know we've had some challenges. Mark or Councillor Cockshaw talked about Belmont earlier. Frankly, it's for us now to be able to structure and shape that. So really, while I reflect on the point that Roger's appointment is only in a certain or small period of time, we are talking about now. Let's talk a little bit more about what we need to be doing in the future. And I think that's the fact that we're going to talk about. And also, just to echo Councillor Massey's point around Roger, again, we've started a debate with a gentleman who is very well regarded across our borough, and certainly within all our ranks, I'm sure. And I think we all probably just need to make sure that we separate any perceived issues of governance or setup with the calibre and capability and care of the individual involved.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Councillor Hebb. And indeed, I mean, nobody, the nicest possible way, nobody put a gun to Roger's head to volunteer to do this. But, he's gone in with eyes open, so knows that there is a continuing need and requirement for him as a director, even after he ceases to be a director, as Councillor Massey pointed out. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. It shows the commitment of Roger and the continuing commitment of Roger and indeed other members of staff once they come towards their end of service. I've seen a hand's gone up. Called Councillor Byrne.
Hello, you got me? Hello?
We can hear you, Councillor Byrne.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I don't know Roger Harris really, but everyone says he's a top man. But we're looking at a £10 million business. Is putting one man as a director in that amount of money, is that not irresponsible? And if that was in any business I've ever been involved with, that would never, ever happen. Is there any, probably in the UK, is there any £10 million business who's got one sole director? Just, for me, it sounds irresponsible, but I don't know. But I know Roger Harris can cope with it, can do it. But a one-man band don't sit easy with me. So can somebody explain that one? It's a lot of money for a one-man band.
I completely agree. It's a lot of money, but we haven't built a house this year. We've completed a house. Not intended to start construction soon, and that's why the housing delivery approach has changed the positions of it. It is a holding position for the next few months while they brings forward. So at the moment, it won't be turning over anything like that. It owns its assets. It's only there. He's looking and hold as a placeholding position until this committee. We come back here. We can come back in March. And then we will look at what happens to actually then by that time there will be some other sites coming forward in the next few months to a PTR and to Cabinet, and we can all have a conversation here. And then a shareholder meeting in March will look at what do we need to make sure this is getting. Because I'm quite right. If it was turning over £10 million a year, as a company, it will need more directors. But in the next 3 months, it won't be turning over or anything like that. It's looking after its arm, and that's what it's doing for the next few months, while this housing delivery approach paper gets some life to it.
Thanks, Mark.
It's fine. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you, Councillor Coxwell. Sorry, I've lost video for everyone there for a little second there. Are there any other questions from members in relation to this? I'm not seeing any hands up. So with that, are we happy to move to the recommendations as outlined on, page, items 1.2, 1.21 and 1.22 and 1.3, 1.31 and 1.32. Does anyone want them read?
Could we like to add something in there? Like that myself and Fraser Massey have mentioned, that we need to look at the articles, bring back a paper for the articles to have a conversation at before the end of March. And I think we should look at a review of the directorships, just like the Councillor Byrne has mentioned that if it does start turning over money, it does need more directors to look at it. And I think Councillor Canardi mentioned that about one director. So we do need to have another review within 3 months. Is this right? How we got? And I would be very happy with that. If we can do something, if someone could write some sort of word for that, is another point, that'd be very helpful to cover the points that Councillor Massey, Councillor Canardi mentioned, and Councillor Byrne mentioned.
Thank you, Councillor Coxwell. I think it's Councillor Kent's got his hand up.
Yeah, I welcome all of that, but frankly, that should have been in the body of this report. And for me, it's too little too late. I think that members have been treated really shabbily in the build up to this. We know that 3 directors of this organisation resigned on the 31st of August. I was asking questions about this as soon as I found out, which was in September, October, and frankly, I was just fobbed off. I think what we've heard tonight, may be all well and good, but it's too little, too late, and I can't support these recommendations this evening.
Thank you for your input there, Councillor Ken. So Councillor Coxwell has put forward that wording for an extra recommendation, something along the lines, and I've been able to type this up. Sorry, Anna.
So I've just made a note of, I think, to give effect to what Councillor Coxwell wants, and that's to bring a report to this committee detailing options for a future operating model of the company and a review of the Articles of Association.
I would say the future directors, the operating model. That
includes the board of directors, but we can specifically state board of directors, but the operating model would be the board of directors, Councillor Coxwell.
And that to be done by the end of March 2021. Sorry, Anna, did you get my last statement? If that's to be done by the end of end of March 2021?
Yeah, that's fine. You're on mute, Councillor.
I knew that would happen at some point this evening. So we've got the recommendations as outlined in the report, plus the third one as just read out by Anna Eastgate. So can I see a show of hands for those that support those recommendations that are written and as described?
I'm sorry, Chair, I didn't quite hear the full change that Anna had, the edit that Anna had put into the recommendation.
In that case, Anna, would you like to repeat?
Yeah,
the recommendation?
So I am actually just typing it into the meeting chat, but basically it says to bring a report back to this committee presenting options on the future operating model of the companies, including the board of directors, and a review of the Articles of Association by the end of March 2021.
Oh, I nearly did it again. So has that been? Does that need to be? Is it in the chat yet, Anna?
Just doing it now. Give me a second.
Rob, you're on mute. Rob, you're on mute.
Councillor Gledhill, this is just to say you're on mute.
I swear this is going to be the new. If your phone goes off in the chamber, fine for anyone that's on mute. At the moment, I probably owe the Mayor's charity far too much. Apologies for that. I was just saying apologies for the silence, even though I was on mute. This is just waiting for the council officer to type up the third recommendation in the chat, but it has been read out twice already. Has that been done as yet, Anna?
Yes, it's in the chat, Councillor Gledhill.
And just to clarify, that would be a fourth recommendation. There are three already in the report, 1.1 through to 1.3. So this would be the Anna's.
Sorry, Mike, I've got two screens open, one of which is completely frozen, solid, a complete different page. Oh no, I'm free now. Yeah, so sorry, that'd be the fourth, not the third recommendation. My apologies. So we've now got the recommendations as outlined at 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and now would be 1.4 as outlined in the chat, should anyone need to read it. So clearing the hands in the chat, and they're clear. So for voting members, can I have those that are voting for all the recommendations, or do we wish to vote on them individually? Councillor Massey, I can see your lips moving, but I think you've just done a me and didn't unmute.
I was just trying to switch back from the chat, Chair.
Thank you. So I think just for clarity, I will go through them one by one. Committee appoints the director of place to attend the shareholders meeting of TRL as the council's nominated proxy. Can I see a show of hands, obviously electronically, for the record, please, if that's agreed? And now I can't raise my hand. That would be...
Councillor, could we just put, like, just go through the names individually and yes or no? Be quicker.
The rate I'm trying to dial screens, you're probably right, Councillor Coxhill. Matt, can I leave you to call roll on this?
Of course, Chair, yes. So I think from gathering from what you're saying, so if I go to recommendation 1.1, I'll read out councillors whether they can just say agree or not. Councillor Gledhill.
Agree.
Councillor Kent.
Against.
Councillor Byrne.
In the world I come from, if this went through, I'd be fired. So definitely got to go against. It's like carry on council. It's just so wrong on so many levels.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Coxhill.
For.
Councillor Hebb.
For.
And Councillor Massey.
Against.
And Councillor Canade.
Against.
So that's 1.1, that's 4 against and 3 for, Chair. Shall I carry on to 1.2?
Yes.
Okay, 1.2. Councillor Gledhill. Councillor Kent,
Against.
Councillor Byrne,
Same reason, against.
Councillor Cockshall,
For.
Councillor Hebb,
For.
Councillor Massey,
Against.
and Councillor Canarde.
Against.
So that's 4-3 against 1.2. And then recommendation 1.
Rather than drag, sorry, Matt, rather than drag this out, are members going to change their mind on any of the other two? Else we're just going to literally be wasting another 10 minutes calling the roll call. So I'm seeing a shake of heads from Councillor Kent, Councillor Massey, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Canarde. Are you changing your mind at all on the rest? Is that a no?
No.
Thank you. Saw it that time. So then, rather than calling this out, I'd say that the recommendations 1.3 and 1.4 will also be voted against. So before we move to close the meeting, Ian, what impact does it have legally in relation to the decisions made tonight?
In essence, Chair, we now haven't actually appointed someone to act as, or set in train the process for appointing a director. Therefore, the company won't have a director for the forthcoming period. So we will need to take that away and look to see what mitigation we can have and how we'll manage that with the company itself.
Can I make two suggestions? Can we look at closing the company and see what happens and the consequences of that are on the tenants? And can we look at also what happens with the what we should, so just foreclose and we close the company at Company's House and that would need to happen now because obviously we're never going to be able to, with these shareholders, decide that. And what are the consequences to the people voting against tonight for any so council and the fines for the people who what would happen there?
Ian?
Yeah, if I may, Chair. In terms of looking at the implications of closing down the company, certainly one of the options that we can look at. Equally, other options are still there, so we can do that options appraisal. In terms of specific impacts on councillors that have voted one way or other, there aren't specific implications in a financial sense. The power of surcharge was removed quite a few years ago. So from that point of view, I don't think that there's any merit in taking that further as a specific thought.
Thank you, Ian. Sorry, I've got. I don't know why my hand's still up. Did I see your hand raised, Anna, or has that now been resolved?
I was just going to mention that if the decision's going to be made to investigate winding up of the company, then the two ways that you do that is one, to appoint a director. In the absence of a director, it has to come back to this committee as the shareholder. The other is to appoint an insolvency practitioner to wind the company up. So we've got fairly limited options in that regard, but we can certainly go away and look at an options paper.
Do you think we? Sorry, Anna. Could we look at that tonight and have a discussion about what this committee would like to do now it's voted not to appoint a director, and I don't think it'll appoint another director in the future. So I don't think it's worth bringing back another paper. I think I'd like to hear the views of especially the against, where we want to move to now. I think and would that mean if we can't appoint a director, even for an interim for a review? I think there is no point for this company. I think so. Do some other colleagues and councillors think that we should be now moving and give a position to the officers tonight of where they would see fit, what they should do, what we should do with it? My personal view is now if it can't appoint a director for 3 months, when we really need to just move on and call a day to this company. Sorry for the tenants.
The options are very limited. If there's no director, then the company needs to be wound up, and there's two processes to do that. Insolvency practitioner, which from my previous life I can assure you will cost dearly, or for it to come back to this group to decommission the companies. So Anna.
Yeah, we can look into it. I think the options are that we proceed with the company, but we need some directors. We agree to liquidate all of the assets of the companies and undertake a solvent winding up of the company. That may involve returning land that the company holds to the council and settling any debts, or depending on what the financial position of the company is, appointing an insolvency practitioner. I don't think it's insolvent to do the winding up, but irrespective of that, we still need a natural person as a director of the company to effect any of these decisions. And in the absence of a natural person as a director, it resorts back to the shareholders, which is essentially coming back to this committee. So we're going around this cyclical discussion. Of course, the other option is that we don't appoint any directors currently, which means we are technically in breach of some provisions of the Companies Act. We expedite bringing forward a new paper with a revised operating model and a proposed new board with a range of skill sets to sit on the board, and we go to market to recruit them. But just off the top of my head, they're the options as I see them.
Thank you, Anna. I've got Councillor Byrne and Councillor Kent, and then I think Councillor Councillor Massey. Councillor Byrne.
Is that me? Yeah, I just think we got to get into real world of business. This is like Mickey Mouse, isn't it? But I would think the directors or the officers that put us in this position, if we get any fines, they should split it. They should not be paid by the residents. So what they've done, which I can say, cock up and irresponsibility. They should pay if there's any fines, it should come out of their purse, not out of the residents' purse. And let's get into the real world and do it in business, what I've been in for 45 years. This is laughable. It's embarrassing.
Well, I think as Ian pointed out, the ability to surcharge on elected members dissipated many years ago, and quite frankly it's the decision of some of those on this meeting tonight that's put us in this position. I will then move to apologies to get the order right. Councillor Ken.
Yeah, I think Ms Gates' last suggestion was actually pretty helpful. Nobody wants to see TRL wound up. I think we all believe that there is still the kernel of a really good idea there that can be taken forward. What I think we're seeing tonight is the inevitable consequence of members not being treated with the respect that they're due. I have been asking about the lack of directors, the consequence of the lack of directors, the future of this company since September. I have received no clear answers whatsoever. To then get called to a General Services Committee and told that here is one option, only one option, that you must take tonight, or we're going to be in trouble in a fortnight, is, I'm afraid, just not good enough. I suggest that we do come back early in the new year with a model, and I do know it's only one word, I may be reading too much into it, but at 3.6 we're told changing the Articles of Association does not preclude them from being changed back at a point in the future once the new operating model is agreed. Not a new operating model, the new operating model. So I would suggest that there is an operating model at least in mind somewhere. We should have that in front of this committee as stakeholders as early as possible in the new year so that we can make some progress and move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Kent.
Can I answer that?
Yeah,
well, that's what we was doing. This was a holding position to give us a new model. We could not do anything until over in scrutiny had seen the housing paper. And there is because it could have said, we don't need TRL now to deliver our housing paper. It says a mixed approach, and we need a mixed approach. That's why it was only in November it was published, No one was commenting on that paper, and that paper clearly soaked the future of TRL, and that's why it's come. After Cabinet on the 9th, it's come here. I just think it's that over and over again, there's been unreasonable answers. We've said, answered the question of full council. What I think is tonight is, it's just, Councillor Kent, you've just voted against it as a tantrum. This it's ludicrous. That's exactly what you've just suggested is what's coming in January, February, March for you to vote on a new model. This is a holding position, a technical holding position paper you voted away today. Should that go back and we should now look at continuously? I think we should certainly look at now not using TRL and building it all ourselves in H and go back and give up with this model, because we can't go every now and again when someone leaves. We don't know what's going to happen tonight in this shareholders meeting. So I think but
I'm sorry, Mark. You know, we all know that in the real world, much work is done between meetings. You don't have to wait for formal meetings. There seems to be no understanding that some of us have been asking these questions for months, and not getting any proper answers anywhere. That leaves us with no option but to ask these questions tonight and to make a stand. Now, if you say this is a tantrum, the only person having a tantrum, as far as I can see, is you. That's saying because I couldn't get my way tonight, I want to close the whole thing down.
No,
I don't think that's the case at all, Councillor Kent. Indeed, I'm sorry. I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Coxall on this. I don't know what correspondence you've sent out. I don't know what correspondence and replies you've received, and whether the replies you've received are adequate, but you don't feel that they are. So that puts us all at a disadvantage in this. And indeed, I feel that that's led to the situation we're in, which has been very limited in what we can do and options thereafter. Perhaps if officers have been really quite good at coming back to give us some limited options, but quite frankly, if we're going to go through this fast every 3 months, TRL is going to rack up the fines. It's going to not deliver or be in a position to deliver, and that will sit on those that, quite frankly, should know better. I'll go to Councillor Massey.
I was asking a question earlier about options. There is the option to ask for an extension for filing company accounts. Has that option already been explored?
I'll put that to Anna.
Chair, it hasn't been explored. We understand that there are some relaxations permitted directly as a result of COVID, actually, with the current pandemic. So no, but there are other general day-to-day operational reasons why an interim director would be required, and that's for things like paying invoices, signing the bank account details, signing checks and invoices. It's purely about operational. That it's not envisaged that this single director would be making any strategic decisions about the future of the company. And in fact, the difficulty we've got is because the company's been in a bit of a hiatus for the last few months, attracting new directors with the range of skill sets and quality of skills that we need to take this forward is not going to be forthcoming at the moment. And in terms of timescales, what I would say to you is we don't have an operating model settled. We produced a paper on an operating model for TRL about 18 months ago that was considered, and there was a move to adopt it. We tried to recruit external directors at that point with little success, even though those posts were offering a small remuneration. I think if you're looking at the future of the company, given the paper that's been through Cabinet and to Housing Overview and Scrutiny, there is renewed enthusiasm for what this company can deliver in the future. And that does need to be supported by a properly resourced board of directors in the company. But it is going to take time to do that. It's not simply about agreeing the operating model. It's then about agreeing the changes to the Articles of Association, undertaking the filing, recruiting those directors. Then we need to devise a process for that. It may need to come back to this committee because, quite rightly, you may well want to have a say in the appointment of those directors and the skill set that you want to see running the company in the future and making those important decisions. So it's not going to be as simple as holding off on appointing a director until we get a new operating model, because that recruitment process, having experienced it a year or so ago, takes 6 months potentially. So, you know, it's a gradual process once we agree the operating model to get that operating model resourced, in the same way that it takes time to recruit officers to posts.
I'd like to add to that, and that's exactly why this model was here tonight. I've brought it to the paper. We've brought it in as soon as the paper passed cabinet. The paper passed in cabinet on the 9th of December. We could have expanded that, and I could have gone over to Christmas and not had it here tonight. But we're going back to sunlight is the best disinfectant. Backroom conversations and all that, and I'm free to conversations with anyone about it. I've been open and honest as much as I can. As soon as that housing delivery paper went through cabinet, immediately within 2 weeks we've got a meeting here. I think that was fair and quick, and nothing hiding here. I'm not trying to hide anything. Councillor Kent said it's been months, but it's been trying to get through a housing paper, and then we can move to a good conversation in the open, in public, of what we want to do is this as shareholders. And sadly, the people who voted against it tonight didn't quite get what we're trying to do. And that means that I can't see us bother coming back and waiting 6 months to get a paper through to this committee twice. We may as well re-look at what this housing model we want to do in delivery model. There is 2 other models, and we'll go to a cabinet delivery model.
Thank you, Councillor Coxhill. Councillor Fraser, Councillor Massey, sorry, you still got your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. The other question I had, when I asked about options earlier, I did mean it. I mean, if Roger was not leaving, what would we be voting on tonight?
We would have to find a nice volunteer like yourself to become director and sign the cheques. Would you like to commit to do it for a couple of months?
I don't think you can as a shareholder, Mark. So we're all.
He could resign his seat.
If you remember when this was originally set up, it was excluding members, and that hasn't changed from the directors' board, as I understand.
Councillor Byrne's got a question.
I've got Councillor Byrne.
Yes, me. I'm lost on this. Just me. I must come from a different world, because this would never ever happen in my world. I'm just lost and think, what the hell we're doing? We're talking a company, we're talking business, and nobody seems to have a clue, do they? It's embarrassing, isn't it? It's just like one-man band and this and that. It's just, I'm lost. I mean, I've spent 45 years in business where I have to report to directors every single day. I have to give figures every day. Every month I have to go to a board meeting and prove my worth and show that the business is where it's going. This is all seems to have gone away. I think, yeah, it's Mickey Mouse. It's not real world. Somebody's playing at it. These people are earning absolute fortunes to not have a clue. I'm just gobsmacked, really.
Well, sorry, Councillor Burns. I completely disagree with you there. It's not officers not having a clue at all. I think, Councillor Coxhill made clear the reasons why we have moved forward into this position in relation to reports having to be put forward because there was quite clearly identified conflicts of interest. So it would be right in the real world to do what's being done. Anna, you've got your hand up again.
Apologies, that's a residual hand.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question in relation to something that you raised earlier, Anna, about obviously having directors to be able to sign cheques and so on. Without the director signing cheques and pretty much day-to-day admin, which is pretty much the position we've been put in tonight because of the voting, is that going to put at risk those residents currently in the properties, or indeed any of the holdings of either the parent company or the subsidiary? I'm
not entirely clear whether that will create any issues. I can't imagine that it will do. We have contracts in place, but obviously we have liabilities and deadlines to settle those contracts. It's not created an issue to my knowledge so far, so I wouldn't envisage that it's going to create any potential future issue at this stage.
Okay, thank you for that, Anna. I'm just going to bring in Councillor Kent, and then quite frankly, it doesn't look like we're going to be moving forward with any sensible suggestions this evening. So it'll be post that if there's any response from Councillor Coxall, and then I'll move to close the meeting. Councillor Kent.
You're on mute, Councillor Kent.
You're on mute.
Sorry, it was the point that Ms Eastgate has just made. I can't envisage any problem that would happen tomorrow that hasn't happened for the last 3.5 months when we haven't had directors. It really could have been resolved by leaving one director in place, perhaps.
Well, clearly, if those directors obviously got their personal responsibility hats on, felt that they needed to step away from the existing model, then they have probably done the right thing, or definitely done the right thing. Anna, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, one director would still require a change to the Articles of Association, which would still need an approval. So just to point that out, because the current articles require 2 directors, so it would have needed 2 directors as a minimum to remain.
And I would point out that we are shareholders, not directors, and we could have solved that tonight by a small change 2 weeks after the housing delivery model has been published. That's very quick, not 3 months, 2 weeks. We went through a small, quick process to deliver a new housing model. The housing model's there. It now needs to keep this show on the road with this machine, and the people living in St Chad's, Tilbury St Chad's, and there's someone looking after their properties. Disappointed.
Well, you've also got to add on to that, Councillor Coxall, it's 2 weeks from the Cabinet paper, but 1 week of that is normal process to get the documentation out to members and be out into the public domain. So it's not 2 weeks as such before this is out to members. That's 7 days, which is exceptionally quick. But to be left in this position, I think is disappointing, to say the least, and we'll be trying to keep a lid on that. It's quite clear, as I said, that nothing else is going to be suggested that's going to make any sense or be progress for this evening, which again is extremely disappointing, but something I'm beginning to get more and more used to, and quite clearly something that shouldn't be happening. So with that, at 19:07, I'm going to call this meeting to a close. I'd like to thank all members and officers on the meeting, and like to wish all of you a Merry Christmas, and speak to you in the new year. Thank you.